The dust hung thick in the August air of Gila Bend, Arizona, when Beatrice Morgan walked out of her husband's house for the last time, carrying nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart heavy with both grief and relief. It was 1878, and the sun beat down mercilessly on the small adobe structure she had called home for the past 6 years. Inside, her 3 children were crying, their small voices calling for their mama, but Beatrice forced herself to keep walking. Her husband Richard stood in the doorway, his face twisted with righteous anger, his mother beside him with that pinched, satisfied expression she always wore when she got her way. "You are no wife at all," Richard had shouted at her just moments before. "What woman refuses her husband? What mother says she will bear no more children? You are unnatural, Beatrice, unnatural and sinful." The doctor had warned her after the last birth that another pregnancy would likely kill her. Little Thomas had come into the world breech, tearing her body in ways that still caused her pain when she walked. The bleeding had lasted for weeks, and the doctor had pulled Richard aside, speaking in low tones that Beatrice had nevertheless overheard. "No more children," he had said. Her body could not withstand it. But Richard's mother had other ideas. 3 children were not enough, she insisted. A proper wife did her duty regardless of the cost. When Beatrice had finally gathered the courage to refuse her husband's advances, explaining through tears that she could not risk another pregnancy, he had been furious. His mother had been worse, calling her selfish, calling her a failure, demanding that Richard cast her out and find a proper wife. And so he had. Beatrice walked down the main street of Gila Bend with her head high despite the tears streaming down her face. She could feel the eyes of the townspeople on her, could hear the whispers starting already. By nightfall, everyone would know. The preacher's wife would be the first to spread the tale, clucking her tongue about wifely duties and the sanctity of marriage. The women would avoid her, afraid that her defiance might be contagious. The men would look at her with either contempt or something worse. She had nowhere to go. Her own parents had passed away 3 years prior, victims of a cholera outbreak that had swept through the territory. Her sister lived in St. Louis, a journey that would require money Beatrice did not have. She had no funds of her own, no possessions, no prospects. Richard had made sure of that, taking even the few coins she had saved from selling eggs at the general store. The afternoon sun was brutal, and Beatrice could feel sweat soaking through her dress. Her throat was parched, her legs unsteady. She had not eaten since breakfast, and the shock of the morning's events was beginning to take its toll. She stumbled slightly, catching herself against a hitching post outside the Lucky Lady Saloon. "Madam, are you all right?" The voice was deep and concerned, with a slight drawl that spoke of Texas origins. Beatrice looked up to find a tall man watching her with worried blue eyes. He was perhaps 25 or 26, she guessed, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his dusty shirt. He wore the clothes of a working cowhand, his leather chaps dusty from riding, his hat pushed back on his head. "I am fine," Beatrice said automatically, though her voice shook with the lie. "Begging your pardon, madam, but you do not look fine." He stepped closer, his hand hovering near her elbow as though ready to catch her if she fell. "You look like you're about to collapse in this heat. When did you last have water?" "This morning," Beatrice admitted. Her pride wanted her to walk away, to refuse any help, but her body was betraying her. Dark spots were dancing at the edges of her vision. "Come on," the cowboy said gently, his hand finally touching her elbow to steady her. "The restaurant across the way is run by Mrs. Chen. She is a good woman. Let me buy you some dinner." "I cannot accept," Beatrice said, even as her stomach cramped with hunger. "It would not be proper. I do not even know your name." "Name's Austin Kane," he said, tipping his hat. "And I reckon propriety matters a whole lot less than making sure you do not faint in the middle of the street. I'm not asking for anything but the pleasure of making sure you are all right. No strings, no expectations, just one human being helping another." There was such genuine kindness in his eyes that Beatrice felt fresh tears spring to her own. When was the last time someone had looked at her with simple human compassion? When was the last time someone had asked what she needed instead of telling her what she owed? "Beatrice Morgan," she whispered, "and I would be grateful for a glass of water." Austin guided her across the street to a small restaurant tucked between the bank and the surveyor's office. The inside was blessedly cool, shaded by thick walls and high ceilings. A small Chinese woman looked up from behind the counter, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Austin," she said in greeting, "you bring a lady who needs help, I think." "Yes, madam, Mrs. Chen. Could we get some water right away? And then maybe some of that chicken stew if you have any left?" Mrs. Chen was already moving, pouring water from a clay pitcher into 2 tin cups. She brought them over herself, pressing one into Beatrice's hands. "You drink slow," she instructed. "Small sips, or you will be sick." Beatrice obeyed, letting the cool water soothe her parched throat. She wanted to gulp it down, but Mrs. Chen's warning made sense. Her stomach was empty and protesting, and the last thing she needed was to embarrass herself by being ill. Austin sat across from her, his own cup of water untouched. He was watching her with those concerned blue eyes, and Beatrice found herself unable to meet his gaze. She must look a sight, she thought. Her dress was wrinkled and dusty, her hair coming loose from its pins, her face surely streaked with tears and dust. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You are very kind." "Just doing what is right," Austin replied. He paused, then added carefully, "I do not mean to pry, Mrs. Morgan, but are you in some kind of trouble? Is there someone I can fetch for you? Your husband, perhaps?" The words struck like a physical blow. Beatrice set down her cup, her hands trembling. "I have no husband," she said, her voice barely audible. "Not anymore." She saw Austin's eyes widen slightly, saw him glance at her left hand where her wedding ring still sat. She had not thought to remove it, had not even considered it in the chaos of the morning. Now she pulled it off with shaking fingers and set it on the table between them. "I was cast out today," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "My husband no longer wants me as his wife." Mrs. Chen appeared with 2 bowls of steaming stew, setting them down gently. She said nothing, but Beatrice saw understanding in her dark eyes. The older woman squeezed Beatrice's shoulder briefly before returning to her counter, a small gesture of solidarity that nearly undid Beatrice completely. "May I ask why?" Austin's voice was gentle, without judgment. Beatrice picked up her spoon, staring down at the stew. It smelled wonderful, rich with chicken and vegetables, but her appetite had fled. Still, she forced herself to take a bite, knowing she needed the strength. "I have 3 children," she began slowly. 3 beautiful children whom I love more than life itself. The last birth nearly killed me. The doctor said another pregnancy would likely succeed where the last one failed. I told my husband I could not risk it. I refused to share his bed anymore." She took a shaky breath. "His mother convinced him that I was an unnatural wife, that I was shirking my duty. So he cast me out, told me to leave and never return." The words hung in the air between them. Beatrice waited for Austin to recoil, to excuse himself, to leave her sitting alone with her shame. Instead, she heard the scrape of his chair as he leaned forward, and when she dared to look up, his face was filled with fury. But not at her. "Your husband cast you out because you did not want to die?" His voice was low and intense. "Because you wanted to live. What kind of man does that to his wife?" "His mother said it was my duty," Beatrice whispered, "that a proper wife submits regardless of the cost. And perhaps she is right. Perhaps I am unnatural and selfish." "No." The word was flat and absolute. Austin reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. "Mrs. Morgan, Beatrice, please listen to me. Your body is your own to choose what happens to it. No man, no mother-in-law, no preacher or doctor or anyone else has the right to demand that you risk your life. You are not unnatural. You are brave." Beatrice stared at him, something cracking open inside her chest. But the vows, she said, I promised to obey, to be a proper wife. Did he promise to love and cherish you? To protect you? Austin's eyes were blazing now. Because casting you out when you are in danger, when you need protection most, that is not love. That is not cherishing. That is cruelty, pure and simple. Tears were streaming down Beatrice's face now, and she could not stop them. For 6 years she had tried to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, had swallowed her own desires and fears and pain to be what Richard and his mother demanded, and in the end it had not been enough. It would never have been enough, because they had wanted her to sacrifice not just her comfort or her happiness, but her very life. I do not know what to do, she admitted, her voice breaking. I have nowhere to go, no money, no family nearby. I cannot even go back to see my children. He said if I came near the house again, he would have the sheriff arrest me for trespassing. The fury on Austin's face deepened, but when he spoke, his voice was calm and controlled. You will not be on the streets tonight, I promise you that. Let me think on this. There must be something we can arrange. They ate in silence for a few minutes, Beatrice forcing down the stew because she knew she needed it, Austin seemingly lost in thought. Finally, he set down his spoon and looked at her directly. I work for the Double K Ranch about 5 miles north of town, he said. Been there for 3 years now. The owner, Mr. Kelly, his wife just had their 4th child, and she has been asking for help around the house. Someone to help with the cooking and cleaning, minding the little ones while she recovers. It does not pay much, but it includes room and board, and Mrs. Kelly is a good woman. Kind, fair. If you are willing, I could ride out there this evening and ask if she would be willing to take you on. Hope flared in Beatrice's chest, tentative and fragile. Why are you helping me? She asked. You do not know me. For all you know, everything my husband said about me is true. Austin smiled, and it transformed his whole face, softening the hard lines earned from years of working under the harsh Arizona sun. My ma raised me to judge people by their actions, not by what others say about them. And from where I am sitting, I see a woman who had the courage to choose life, who is trying to survive despite everything being stacked against her. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She was, Austin agreed, and there was old grief in his voice. Cholera took her when I was 16. But I have tried to live by what she taught me. Kindness costs nothing, she used to say, but it is worth more than gold. Mrs. Chen came over to refill their water cups. The lady needs a place to stay tonight, she said, not a question but a statement. She can have the room upstairs. I use it for storage, but there is a cot. It is clean and cool. Mrs. Chen, I cannot pay you, Beatrice protested. The older woman waved a hand dismissively. You think I do not know what it is to be cast out? I do. And I remember the ones who helped me. You stay tonight. Tomorrow we see what happens. The kindness was overwhelming. Beatrice had been so certain that the whole world would turn against her, that her defiance would mark her as irredeemable in everyone's eyes. Instead, these two near strangers were offering her help without hesitation, without judgment. Thank you, she said, looking between Austin and Mrs. Chen. Both of you. I do not know how I will ever repay such kindness. You will help someone else when they need it, Mrs. Chen said simply. That is how kindness works. It moves forward like a river. Austin finished his stew and stood. I will ride out to the Double K now, talk to the Kellys. With luck, I will be back before dark with good news. He settled his hat on his head and left some coins on the table, enough to cover both meals and more besides. Mrs. Morgan, try to rest. You have been through a terrible ordeal today. After he left, Mrs. Chen led Beatrice upstairs to a small room tucked under the eaves. It was as promised, clean and cool despite the heat outside, with a narrow cot and a small table. A window looked out over the main street, and Beatrice could see the setting sun painting the desert rocks in shades of orange and red. I will bring you water for washing, Mrs. Chen said, and a clean dress if you like. We are about the same size, I think. You have already done so much, Beatrice protested weakly. Not enough, Mrs. Chen replied. Never enough. This world is hard on women. We must help each other where we can. She paused at the door. Your husband, he is a fool. Any man who would throw away a woman brave enough to choose life does not deserve her in the first place. Alone in the small room, Beatrice sank onto the cot and let herself finally break down. She cried for her children, for the life she had lost, for the fear and uncertainty of the future. But underneath the grief there was something else, something she had not felt in a very long time, relief. She had been so tired, so worn down by trying to meet impossible expectations, by swallowing her own pain and fear to be what everyone else wanted her to be. And while the cost had been terrible, while losing her children was an agony that she knew would never fully heal, there was a part of her that felt suddenly, impossibly free. She did not have to be afraid anymore, did not have to dread each night, wondering if this would be the time she became pregnant again, if this would be the pregnancy that killed her. Her body was her own again, as Austin had said. Her choices were her own. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Mrs. Chen returned with a basin of water and a simple but clean cotton dress in a soft blue color. Beatrice washed the dust and tears from her face and changed clothes, feeling slightly more human. She folded her old dress carefully, reluctant to leave it behind despite everything it represented. The sun was setting when she heard the sound of hoofbeats outside. She went to the window and saw Austin dismounting from a sturdy bay horse. Even from above she could see the smile on his face, and her heart leaped. She hurried downstairs to find him already inside, talking to Mrs. Chen. He turned when Beatrice appeared, and his smile widened. Good news, Karar, he said. Mrs. Kelly would be delighted to have your help. She said to bring you out first thing tomorrow morning so you can meet the family and settle in. The pay is not much, $2 a week, plus room and board, but it is honest work, and they are good people. $2 a week. It was not much, but it was something. It was independence. It was survival. Thank you, Beatrice said, and she was crying again, but these were different tears. Tears of gratitude and relief. Thank you, Austin. I do not know what I would have done without your help. You would have figured something out, Austin said with certainty. You are stronger than you think, Mrs. Morgan, but I am glad I could help make things a little easier. He left shortly after, promising to return at dawn with a wagon to carry Beatrice out to the ranch. Mrs. Chen fed her a light supper of rice and vegetables, then sent her up to rest, insisting that she needed to recover her strength. Beatrice lay in the narrow cot, listening to the sounds of Gila Bend settling down for the night. Somewhere out there, her children were sleeping. Did they understand why their mama had left? Did they cry for her? Richard would tell them lies, she knew, would paint her as the villain, as the bad mother who had abandoned them. The thought was torture, but there was nothing she could do. Not now, maybe not ever. But she was alive, and as long as she was alive, there was hope. She slept fitfully, her dreams full of small hands reaching for her, small voices calling her name. She woke before dawn, her pillow damp with tears, but her resolve firm. She would build a new life. She would survive, and someday, somehow, she would find a way back to her children. Austin arrived just as the sun was breaking over the horizon, driving a small wagon pulled by 2 sturdy horses. Mrs. Chen pressed a package of food into Beatrice's hands for the journey and refused to accept any payment. You helped me by letting me help you, she said when Beatrice protested. Sometimes that is the greatest gift we can give someone. The ride out to the Double K Ranch took about an hour over rough desert roads. Austin kept the horses to a steady pace, careful not to jostle Beatrice too much. They talked little during the journey, but it was a comfortable silence, not an awkward one. The ranch, when it came into view, was larger than Beatrice had expected. A sprawling adobe house sat at the center, surrounded by corrals and outbuildings. Cattle dotted the landscape, and she could see several cowboys working in the distance. A man came out of the house as they approached, tall and broad-shouldered with graying hair. Austin pulled the wagon to a stop and jumped down, moving to help Beatrice descend. "Mr. Kelly, this is Mrs. Beatrice Morgan," Austin said. "Mrs. Morgan, this is James Kelly, owner of the Double K." James Kelly studied Beatrice with shrewd but not unkind eyes. "My wife tells me you are in need of work," he said bluntly, "and she is in need of help. Seems like it might work out well for both parties." "I am a hard worker, Mr. Kelly," Beatrice said, meeting his gaze directly. "I know how to cook and clean, how to tend children. I will earn my keep, I promise you that." Something in her directness seemed to satisfy him. He nodded. "Come inside and meet Margaret. She will show you what needs doing." The inside of the house was spacious and surprisingly comfortable. Margaret Kelly was a plump, pleasant-faced woman of about 30, with a baby in her arms, and exhaustion written in every line of her body. Her face lit up when she saw Beatrice. "Oh, thank goodness," she said. "I'm sorry. That is terribly rude, but I'm just so grateful for help. This is our fourth," she jiggled the baby gently, "and I am not recovering as quickly as I did with the others. The other three are running wild, the house is a disaster, and I'm about ready to weep from sheer exhaustion." Beatrice felt herself relax slightly. This was something she understood, something she knew how to do. "Where would you like me to start?" she asked. Margaret showed her around the house, explaining the usual routines. The other three children, 2 boys and a girl, ranging from 8 down to 3, were indeed running somewhat wild. The kitchen showed evidence of several meals prepared and eaten but not cleaned up. Laundry was piled in baskets. It was overwhelming, but in a different way than Beatrice's old life had been. This was honest work for honest pay. She was being asked, not commanded. Margaret spoke to her as an equal, not a servant, and made it clear that Beatrice's well-being mattered. "I know $2 a week is not much," Margaret said apologetically, "but you will have your own room, all your meals, and I promise James and I are reasonable employers. We do not expect miracles, just honest effort." "It is more than fair," Beatrice assured her. "I am grateful for the opportunity." Austin had stayed long enough to help carry Beatrice's meager belongings, which consisted solely of the dress Mrs. Chen had given her and the package of food, to her new room. It was small but private, with a real bed and a window that looked out over the desert. Compared to the cot in Mrs. Chen's storage room, it felt like luxury. "I will let you get settled," Austin said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "But if you need anything at all, you just let me know. I bunk with the other hands in the building out past the barn, but I'm around most days." "Thank you, Austin," Beatrice said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. "You saved my life yesterday. I will not forget that." He ducked his head, looking embarrassed. "Just did what was right. Any decent person would have done the same." But Beatrice knew that was not true. There had been plenty of people on the street in Gila Bend who had watched her stumble and done nothing. Austin Kane had chosen to help, and that made all the difference. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that was both exhausting and oddly satisfying. Beatrice rose before dawn to start breakfast for the family and the ranch hands. She tended to the children, teaching them their letters and numbers in between cleaning and cooking. She helped Margaret with the baby, walking the floor when he fussed at night so Margaret could sleep. It was hard work, much harder physically than her life with Richard had been, but it was also simpler. No one here demanded that she be something she was not. No one criticized her every move or found fault with everything she did. Margaret was grateful for her help and said so often. Mr. Kelly treated her with distant but genuine respect. And the children, after an initial period of testing boundaries, came to adore her. Austin was a constant presence, always seeming to appear when she needed help with something heavy or difficult. He would carry water for laundry or help corral the older Kelly children when they got too rambunctious, or simply sit on the porch in the evening and talk with her after the day's work was done. She learned that he was from San Antonio originally, the youngest of 5 children. His father had been a Texas Ranger who died in a skirmish with Comanche raiders when Austin was 10. His mother had taken in laundry and sewing to keep the family fed, and Austin had started working as soon as he was old enough to ride. "She was the strongest person I ever knew," Austin said one evening as they watched the sun set over the desert. She never complained, never gave up, even when things were impossibly hard. When she got sick with cholera, she made me promise that I would live a good life, that I would help people when I could. Said her legacy was not in things but in the kindness we put into the world. She would be proud of you, Beatrice said quietly. Austin shrugged, but she could see he was pleased. I try. Do not always succeed, but I try. Beatrice found herself telling him things she had never spoken aloud to anyone, about how she had loved Richard when they married, how he had been kind at first, about how his mother had moved in after the first baby was born and everything had changed, about the slow erosion of her self-worth under the constant criticism and impossible demands. I thought it was normal, she confessed. I thought that was what marriage was supposed to be. My own mother had always preached submission and obedience as the highest virtues. It never occurred to me that I could say no, that I had the right to say no. You always had that right, Austin said fiercely. God gave us free will, gave us voices to speak our truth. Anyone who tells you different is trying to control you, not love you. His words were a balm to wounds Beatrice had not even fully acknowledged. Slowly, carefully, she began to rebuild her sense of self. To remember that she was more than just a wife and mother, that she had value beyond her ability to serve others. But the pain of being separated from her children never faded. She would see Margaret with her baby, would hear the laughter of the Kelly children, and her heart would ache with longing. She missed her daughter Emily's gap-toothed smile, her son John's serious questions about how everything worked, little Thomas's sticky kisses. One evening in late September, about 6 weeks after she had arrived at the ranch, Austin found her crying in the kitchen after everyone else had gone to bed. He did not say anything, just sat down beside her and handed her his handkerchief. I thought it would get easier, Beatrice said through her tears. But it does not. It just keeps hurting. Of course it does, Austin said gently. They are your children. That love does not go away just because you are separated from them. What if they forget me? What if Richard tells them such terrible things about me that they grow up hating me? Austin was quiet for a moment, then said slowly, I cannot promise you that will not happen, but I can tell you this. Children remember love. They remember who made them feel safe and cherished. And from everything you have told me, you loved those children with everything you had. That kind of love leaves a mark, Mrs. Morgan. It does not fade. Call me Beatrice, she said impulsively. We have known each other long enough now, I think. She saw him smile in the lamplight. Then you should call me Austin. None of this Mr. Kane business. Something shifted between them in that moment, a deepening of the friendship that had been growing over the past weeks. Beatrice found herself thinking about Austin more often, noticing little things, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the gentleness of his hands when he helped her with a difficult task, the sound of his voice, low and soothing when he talked with the horses. She told herself it was just gratitude, just the natural affection one felt for a friend. But deep down she knew it was becoming something more, and that terrified her. She was still technically married, even if Richard had cast her out. And even if she were free, what did she have to offer? She was 24 years old with 3 children she could not see. No money, no prospects beyond her position as a housekeeper. Austin could have his pick of young women in town, girls without her baggage and complications, but sometimes she would catch him looking at her with an expression that made her breath catch. And sometimes when their hands would accidentally brush as they worked, she would feel a spark of something electric pass between them. October brought cooler weather and roundup season. The ranch became a hive of activity as the cowboys worked long hours gathering cattle to be sold. Austin was often gone from before dawn until well after dark, and Beatrice was surprised by how much she missed his presence. Margaret noticed, of course. Women always notice such things. Austin Kane is a good man, she said one afternoon as they worked on mending clothes together. The baby was sleeping, and the older children were at their lessons with their father. Best cowhand we have ever had. James says he could be a foreman anywhere he wanted, but he stays here because he likes the work and the people. Beatrice kept her eyes on her stitching. He has been very kind to me. He looks at you the way James looked at me when we were courting, Margaret continued, a smile in her voice. Like you are the most fascinating thing in the world. Margaret, Beatrice protested, feeling her face heat. I am married, or was married. I do not even know what I am. But I have no business thinking about courtship or anything like it. Why not? Margaret set down her own mending and looked at Beatrice directly. Your husband cast you out. He made his choice when he chose his mother's demands over your life. You do not owe him loyalty anymore. But legally I am still his wife, and the church says that marriage is forever no matter what, Margaret snorted, a surprisingly inelegant sound. The church says a lot of things that do not always make sense to me, like that women should submit to men even when those men are wrong, even when it kills us. That does not sound like the God I believe in, the one Jesus talked about who loves us and wants us to thrive. Beatrice looked up, startled. It was the first time she had heard another woman voice doubts about the teachings they had both been raised with. You think I'm right? She asked hesitantly. To have refused? To have chosen life? I think you were right, and I think you were brave, Margaret said firmly, and I think any God worth worshiping would agree. You were not being selfish. You were being sensible. There is no virtue in martyrdom when you have children who need you. But I am not with my children, Beatrice said, her voice breaking. They think I abandoned them. For now, Margaret said. But you are alive, Beatrice. You are alive and building a life for yourself. And someday when they are old enough to seek the truth, they will find you, and they will understand. It was a hope Beatrice clung to in the dark moments, when the longing for her children threatened to overwhelm her. The roundup ended in mid-October, and Austin returned to more regular hours. He looked exhausted, but satisfied, and Beatrice found herself fussing over him, making sure he had extra portions at meals, insisting he sit down and rest instead of helping her with chores. You are going to spoil me, Austin teased one evening. I will get used to such treatment and be impossible to work with. Then the other hands can blame me, Beatrice replied, ladling out an extra helping of stew into his bowl. You have been working yourself to the bone for weeks. You deserve a little spoiling. Their eyes met, and something passed between them that was impossible to ignore. Beatrice felt her pulse quicken, felt heat rise in her cheeks. Austin looked like he was about to say something, but then Margaret called from the other room, needing help with the baby. And the moment passed. But it had been there, unmistakable. Whatever was growing between them was not just her imagination. In November, word came that there would be a social at the church in Gila Bend, a harvest celebration with dinner and dancing. Margaret insisted that Beatrice should go, that she deserved some fun after working so hard. I cannot, Beatrice protested. The townspeople, they all know what happened. They will judge me, avoid me. It will be miserable. Or, Margaret countered, they will see that you are a respectable woman working an honest job, and they will have to reconsider their judgments. Besides, Austin will be going. He could escort you. The idea of attending a social with Austin made Beatrice's heart race, but she shook her head. I do not want to cause trouble for him. If he is seen with me, people might talk. Let them talk, Margaret said firmly. You have done nothing wrong, Beatrice. You have nothing to be ashamed of. In the end, it was Austin who convinced her. He came to the kitchen one evening and asked outright if she would accompany him to the social. I know you are worried about what people will say, he said, but I do not care about gossip. I care about you, and I think you deserve a night of enjoyment. Besides, he added with a slight smile, I'm not much of a dancer. I could use someone patient to help me stumble through it. How could she say no to that? The night of the social, Beatrice dressed carefully in the best dress she owned, another hand-me-down from Margaret, but still nicer than anything she had worn in months. She pinned up her hair and stared at herself in the small mirror in her room. She looked different than she had 6 months ago. Thinner, yes, but also stronger somehow. There was a determination in her eyes that had not been there before. Austin cleaned up well, appearing in a clean shirt and his best trousers, his hair still damp from washing. The look in his eyes when he saw Beatrice made her feel beautiful for the first time in longer than she could remember. The ride into town was pleasant, the evening air cool and crisp, but as they approached the church, Beatrice felt her anxiety rising. What if Richard was there? What if people confronted her, called her names? As if sensing her fear, Austin reached over and gently took her hand. "I am right here," he said quietly, "and I will not let anyone hurt you." The social was already in full swing when they arrived. The church hall was decorated with autumn leaves and candles, and the air was filled with the smell of food and the sound of fiddle music. Beatrice saw heads turn as they entered, saw the whispers start, and then Mrs. Chen was there, appearing at Beatrice's side with a warm smile. "You look lovely," she said firmly, loudly enough for those nearby to hear. "Come, you must try my pork buns. I brought extra." Having Mrs. Chen's public support helped, as did the fact that Margaret and James Kelly greeted them warmly, treating Beatrice as a valued member of their household. Slowly, cautiously, other women began to approach. Not everyone, certainly. The preacher's wife turned her back pointedly, and several of the more prominent town matrons avoided her. But there were others, women who had perhaps had their own struggles, their own moments of defying expectations, who were kinder than Beatrice had expected. One woman, a widow named Sarah, pulled Beatrice aside at one point. "I heard what happened," she said quietly, "and I wanted you to know that I think you were brave. I lost my sister to childbirth last year, her 6th baby. The doctor had warned her too, but her husband insisted. I have thought many times that if she had had the courage to refuse like you did, she would still be alive." The words brought tears to Beatrice's eyes. "I am so sorry for your loss." "And I am sorry for yours," Sarah replied. "I know you had to leave your children. That must be agony." It was the first time someone had acknowledged that pain, had recognized what her choice had cost her. Beatrice found herself pouring out her heart to this near stranger, and Sarah listened with understanding and compassion. When the dancing started, Austin claimed the first dance with Beatrice. He had not been lying about his skills, she discovered. He was indeed a clumsy dancer, counting steps under his breath and occasionally treading on her toes. But he was trying so hard, and there was such joy in his face that Beatrice found herself laughing for the first time in months. "You are terrible at this," she teased as he nearly spun them into another couple. "I warned you," Austin replied, grinning. "But you are laughing, so I count it as a success." They danced 3 more dances, and with each one, Austin improved slightly. Or perhaps Beatrice just got better at anticipating his movements. Either way, by the end of the evening, they were moving together with something almost like grace. As Austin drove her back to the ranch, Beatrice found herself filled with a lightness she had not felt in years. "Thank you, Shino," she said. "Tonight was wonderful." "You are wonderful," Austin said, then seemed startled by his own boldness. I'm glad you had a good time." They were quiet for the rest of the ride, but it was a comfortable silence, full of things unsaid but understood. November turned to December, and the desert took on a stark beauty as winter settled in. The work around the ranch slowed somewhat, and Beatrice found herself with more time to talk with Austin. They would sit by the fire in the evenings after the Kelly family had gone to bed, talking about everything and nothing. Austin told her about his dreams of someday having his own small ranch, just enough land for a few cattle and horses. Beatrice told him about how she had always wanted to learn to read better, to have access to books and knowledge. "I could teach you," Austin offered. "I am no scholar, but I can read pretty well. My ma insisted on it." And so they began spending their evenings with Austin, teaching Beatrice to read from the few books the Kellys owned. It was slow going at first, Beatrice stumbling over unfamiliar words, but Austin was patient and encouraging. And there was something intimate about sitting close together, their heads bent over a book, Austin's voice low and steady as he helped her sound out difficult passages. One evening in mid-December, Beatrice looked up from the book they were reading to find Austin watching her with such tenderness that it took her breath away. "What is it?" she asked softly. "I am falling in love with you," Austin said simply. I probably should not say it, but it is the truth, and I do not want to lie to you. Beatrice's heart felt like it might burst from her chest. Austin, I am still married. Legally, technically, I am still Richard's wife. Are you? Austin leaned forward, his eyes intense. He cast you out, Beatrice. He made you leave. He gave up any claim to you the day he chose his mother's demands over your life. In every way that matters, you are free. But the law, the church, they would not see it that way. Then maybe the law and the church are wrong. Austin reached out and gently took her hand. Beatrice, I know this is complicated. I know there are obstacles. But I also know that what I feel for you is real and true, and I hope that maybe you feel something for me too. I do, Beatrice whispered, tears streaming down her face. God help me, I do. But Austin, I have 3 children. I have no money, no prospects beyond this job. I am damaged goods, as they say. You could do so much better than me. There is no better than you, Austin said fiercely. You are the strongest, bravest, most compassionate woman I have ever met. You faced an impossible choice, and you made the right one, even knowing what it would cost. You have rebuilt your life from nothing. You work harder than anyone I know, and you never complain. And you are beautiful, Beatrice. Inside and out, you are beautiful. What about my children? Beatrice asked, her voice breaking. If there was ever a we, they would be part of that. I could never abandon them completely, even if I cannot see them now. Then we will figure out a way to be part of their lives, Austin said. When they are older, when they can choose for themselves, we will make sure they know where you are and that you never stopped loving them. And if that means they become part of our family, then so be it. I would be honored to help raise your children, Beatrice. The tears were flowing freely now. Beatrice had not dared to hope, had not let herself imagine that she could have this, that she could have love and partnership and a future that held something other than solitary survival. I am scared, she admitted. I am so scared of being hurt again, of making another mistake. Then we will take it slow, Austin said. We will take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere, Beatrice. I will wait as long as it takes for you to be sure. Beatrice looked at their joined hands, at this good man who had appeared in her life like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to voice, and she made a choice. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft and tentative, a question as much as an answer, but Austin responded with such gentle reverence that Beatrice felt something locked tight inside her finally begin to open. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Not demands and expectations and the slow erosion of self, but respect and tenderness and the freedom to choose. When they pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. So we are doing this? Austin asked, a note of wonder in his voice. We are doing this, Beatrice confirmed, slowly, carefully, but yes, we are doing this. Christmas that year was the happiest Beatrice had known in longer than she could remember. The Kellys invited her to celebrate as part of the family, and Austin gave her a gift that made her cry. It was a journal bound in soft leather with her initials pressed into the cover. For your writing practice, he explained, and for whatever else you want to put in it. Thoughts, dreams, letters you might want to write someday. It is yours, just yours. Beatrice clutched it to her chest like the treasure it was. No one had ever given her something so personal, so perfectly suited to her needs and desires. She gave him a pair of gloves she had sewn in secret using scraps of leather from the tack room. They were imperfect, her stitching uneven in places, but Austin put them on immediately and declared them the finest gloves he had ever owned. That night, after the family had gone to bed, they sat together by the fire, and Austin read aloud from the Bible. Not the passages about wifely submission and obedience, but the ones about love and kindness and mercy, about how the last shall be first and how God cares for the outcasts and the abandoned. I think Jesus would have been on your side, Austin said thoughtfully. He was always speaking up for women, treating them like they mattered. like they had value beyond what they could do for men. Remember the woman at the well? The one caught in adultery? He did not condemn them. He saw them as people. Beatrice rested her head on Austin's shoulder, feeling safe and cherished in a way she never had before. "You see me that way," she said, "as a person, not just as a wife or mother or housekeeper. You see me." "I do," Austin agreed, "and I love what I see." The new year of 1879 brought changes. In January, Margaret sat down with Beatrice and Austin and made a proposal. "James and I have been talking," she said. "We know that the two of you are courting, and we are happy for you, but we also know that Beatrice's situation is complicated, so we have a proposal. James owns a small cabin about a mile from here, on the edge of the ranch property. It has been sitting empty for a year now since old Tom retired and moved to stay with his daughter. We would like to offer it to you, Austin, at a reduced rent. And Beatrice, you could continue working here, but have a place that feels more like a home. And if things progress between you two, well, you would have a place to start your life together." Beatrice felt tears spring to her eyes yet again. The kindness of the Kellys never ceased to amaze her. "That is incredibly generous," she managed to say. "You have both earned it," Margaret replied. "Austin is the best hand we have ever had, and Beatrice, you have been a godsend. This family was falling apart before you came. You have brought order and peace back to our home. We want you both to be happy." Austin looked at Beatrice, a question in his eyes. She nodded, and he turned back to the Kellys. "We accept and thank you. You have given us a gift beyond measure." They moved Austin into the cabin the following week. It was small but well built, with 2 rooms and a fireplace, and a small porch that looked out over the desert. Austin spent his spare time fixing it up, mending the roof, and replacing a cracked window pane. Beatrice helped when she could, bringing out curtains she had sewn and helping to make the place feel like a home. She was careful about propriety, never staying after dark, always making sure there were others around when she visited, but it was thrilling to have a place that felt like theirs, a space they were building together. In February, a month after the cabin was ready, a lawyer appeared at the ranch looking for Beatrice. Her heart sank, fearing that Richard had sent him with some legal action, but instead the news he brought was unexpected. Richard wanted a divorce. "He has met another woman," the lawyer explained with clinical detachment, "a widow with means, but she will not marry him while he is still legally wed to you. So he is willing to divorce you on the grounds of abandonment, provided you do not contest it or seek any alimony." Beatrice sat down heavily, her mind reeling. "And my children?" "He would retain full custody. You would have no legal rights to see them." It was what she had expected, but it still felt like a knife to the heart. Still, what choice did she have? She had no money to fight for custody, and even if she did, the law was firmly on Richard's side. A woman who had refused her husband, who had been cast out, would have no standing in court. "If I agree," she said slowly, "would there be any possibility of seeing them sometimes, when they are older perhaps?" The lawyer shrugged. "That would be up to your husband. The divorce decree would not prohibit it, but it also would not require him to allow it." Beatrice looked at Austin, who had been standing silently beside her. "What should I do?" "I cannot make this choice for you," Austin said gently, "but I can tell you this. If you agree, you will be free. Legally, completely free. And freedom means you can build whatever life you want. If Richard allows you to see the children someday, that will be wonderful. If he does not, well, at least you will have given yourself the chance at a future." Beatrice thought about her children, about Emily and John and little Thomas. She thought about how they were growing up without her, being raised by a father who valued obedience over compassion and a grandmother who had no room for mercy. And she thought about the possibility of a future with Austin, of a life built on mutual respect and love, of perhaps someday having more children who would grow up in a home filled with kindness. "I will agree," she said finally, "on one condition. I want a clause in the divorce that says if any of my children, when they reach adulthood, wish to contact me, they may do so without interference." The lawyer nodded. "I can make that request. I cannot guarantee your husband will agree, but I will try." He returned a week later with the papers. Richard had agreed to the clause, probably because he was confident his children would never want to contact their mother after years of hearing how she had abandoned them. But Beatrice signed the papers with a lighter heart, knowing that at least the door was not completely closed. 6 weeks after that, a letter arrived declaring the divorce final. Beatrice Morgan was no longer a married woman. She sat on the porch of the cabin with Austin that evening, watching the sun set over the desert. "I am free," she said wonderingly. "Truly, completely free." "What do you want to do with that freedom?" Austin asked. Beatrice turned to look at him. At this man who had saved her life in more ways than one, who had shown her what real love looked like. "I want to marry you," she said boldly. "If you still want me, I want to be your wife." Austin's face lit up like the sunrise. "I have wanted that since the day I met you," he said. "Beatrice Morgan, will you do me the honor of becoming Beatrice Kane?" "Yes," Beatrice said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married in April, in a simple ceremony at the ranch with the Kellys and a few friends as witnesses. Mrs. Chen came out from town bringing a beautiful cake she had made herself. Even some of the other ranch hands attended, men who had come to respect Beatrice for her hard work and kindness. Beatrice wore a dress Margaret had made for her, a simple design in cream-colored cotton with wildflowers in her hair. Austin wore his best suit, looking nervous and proud, and happier than Beatrice had ever seen him. When the justice of the peace asked if she took Austin to be her husband, Beatrice looked into his eyes and said, "I do," with absolute certainty. And when Austin promised to love and cherish her, to honor her choices and respect her personhood, Beatrice knew that this time the vows meant something real. They moved into the cabin together, and Beatrice continued to work for the Kellys part-time while also building a home with Austin. It was hard work, ranching life, but it was satisfying in a way her previous life had never been. She and Austin were partners in every sense of the word, making decisions together, sharing the burdens and the joys. In late summer, Beatrice realized she was pregnant. Her first emotion was terror, the old fear rising up like a monster from the depths. But Austin held her close and reminded her that this time was different. "We will get the doctor out from town regularly," he promised. "We will make sure you have the best care possible. And Beatrice, if at any point you want to stop, if you are scared or in pain, we can make choices to protect you. Your life comes first. Always." The pregnancy was different from her previous ones. Austin treated her like she was made of glass, insisting she rest when she was tired, bringing her water and food without being asked. Margaret kept a close eye on her, and the doctor made monthly visits to check on her progress. And through it all, Beatrice felt loved and cared for in a way she never had before. Their son was born in March of 1880, arriving safely after a long but manageable labor. They named him Andrew, after Austin's father. He had his father's blue eyes and his mother's stubborn chin, and Beatrice loved him with a fierce intensity that sometimes frightened her. But loving Andrew did not mean she forgot her other children. She thought about them every day, wondered how they were growing, if they ever thought about her. Austin understood, never showing jealousy or resentment when she would get a distant look in her eyes. "They are your children too," he would say. "They will always have a place in your heart, and that is as it should be." Life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Austin proved to be as good a father as he was a husband, patient and playful with Andrew. Beatrice's reading improved to the point where she could help teach the Kelly children their letters. The little cabin on the edge of the Double K Ranch became a real home filled with love and laughter. In the spring of 1882, when Andrew was 2 years old and Beatrice was pregnant with their second child, something unexpected happened. A teenage girl appeared at the ranch, asking for Beatrice Kane. She was about 13, with familiar dark hair and brown eyes that Beatrice would have known anywhere. "Emily?" Beatrice whispered, her voice breaking. Her daughter nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Mama? Is it really you?" Beatrice pulled Emily into her arms, both of them sobbing. "How did you find me? Does your father know you are here?" "I ran away," Emily said. "I waited until he and grandmother went to town. And then I took the money I had saved and hired a ride out here. Mama, I remember you. I remember how you used to sing to me, how you made everything better. And then you were gone. And Father said terrible things, but I never believed him. I knew you would not have left us unless you had no choice. I did not want to leave, Beatrice said, clutching her daughter close. I wanted to stay so badly, but your father cast me out because I would not risk dying to have more babies. I am so sorry, Emily. I am so sorry you have gone through all this. They talked for hours, Beatrice explaining what had happened in terms Emily could understand. Emily telling her mother about the past 4 years. About how Richard had married his widow a year after the divorce, how the new wife was cold and strict. About how John and Thomas were doing growing up under their father's stern hand. They remember you too, Emily said. John talks about you sometimes when Father is not around, and Thomas, he is only 8, but he has your letters. My letters? Beatrice asked, confused. The ones you wrote but never sent, Emily explained. I found them in the attic, hidden in an old trunk. You wrote to us every week for the first year after you left. Telling us you loved us, telling us you were sorry, asking us to remember that you did not abandon us by choice. Beatrice felt tears flowing again. She had written those letters as therapy, a way to process her grief, never imagining her children would ever see them. Richard must have intercepted them, keeping them from the children while telling them their mother had forgotten about them. I never stopped loving you, Beatrice said fiercely. Not for 1 second. You have always been in my heart. Emily stayed for 3 days, getting to know Austin and meeting her baby half-brother Andrew. Austin was wonderful with her, treating her with the same gentle respect he showed everyone, making it clear that she was welcome in their home any time. But eventually, Emily had to go back. Father will have noticed I'm gone by now, she said sadly. He will be furious. But Mama, I needed to see you. I needed to know you still loved us. Always, Beatrice promised. And Emily, when you're older, when you're 18, if you want to leave your father's house, you have a place here. You will always have a place here. They arranged a way for Emily to send letters, using Mrs. Chen as an intermediary so Richard would not find out. And through those letters, Beatrice was able to maintain some connection with her children to let them know she had not forgotten them. John started writing to her when he was 15, shy letters at first that gradually became more open. He wanted to know about her life, about Austin, about his half-siblings. Thomas's letters were simpler, often just a few sentences, but they were precious beyond measure. As the years passed, Beatrice and Austin's family grew. They had 3 more children, a daughter they named Margaret after the kind woman who had given Beatrice her first chance, and then twin boys. The little cabin became too small, and Austin used his savings to build a larger house, still on the edge of the Double K, but with room for their growing family. Austin proved to be a natural rancher, and eventually James Kelly offered to sell him a portion of the ranch land. It took years of saving and hard work, but by 1890, Austin and Beatrice had their own small ranch, the Double A, named for Austin and Andrew. It was not a large spread, just enough land for a modest herd of cattle and some horses. But it was theirs, built on mutual respect and partnership. Beatrice managed the finances and kept the books, her reading and writing skills now well developed. Austin handled the stock and the hard physical labor, though he always made sure to include Beatrice in any major decisions. In the summer of 1892, a young man appeared at their door. He was 19 years old, tall and serious-faced, with Richard's features but Beatrice's eyes. "John?" Beatrice said, her hand flying to her mouth. Her son nodded. "I turned 18 last year," he said. "I have been working and saving so I could come find you. Mama, I want to know you, and I want you to meet Sarah, my fiancée." A pretty young woman stepped forward, and Beatrice welcomed them both with tears of joy. John stayed for 2 weeks, getting to know his mother and the family she had built. He met his half-siblings, worked alongside Austin, learning the ranching business, and slowly began to heal the wound that his father's lies had created. "Father told us you abandoned us because you were selfish," John said one evening. "But Emily told me the truth, and I found the letters. Mama, I'm sorry I believed him for so long." "You were a child," Beatrice said gently. "You believed what you were told. There's nothing to forgive." Thomas came the following year, bringing similar apologies and a hunger for connection. He was quieter than John, more damaged by Richard's harsh parenting, but over time he too found healing in the warmth and acceptance of Beatrice and Austin's home. Emily, who had married at 17 to escape her father's house, brought her own children to visit regularly. She had chosen a kind man, Beatrice was pleased to see, someone who treated her with respect and tenderness. By 1895, Beatrice was 41 years old and surrounded by family. Her 3 oldest children had reconnected with her, bringing their own families to join the growing web of relationships. Her 4 youngest, raised in a home filled with love and respect, were thriving. One evening, as she and Austin sat on the porch of their home watching the sunset, Beatrice reflected on the journey that had brought her here. "Do you ever regret it?" Austin asked quietly. "The choice you made all those years ago?" Beatrice thought about it honestly. "I regret that I lost years with Emily, John, and Thomas," she said slowly. "I regret the pain they went through. But regret the choice itself? No, I chose life, Austin. And that choice led me to you, to our children, to this life we have built together. How could I regret that?" "You were so brave," Austin said, taking her hand. "The bravest person I have ever known." "I had help," Beatrice replied, squeezing his hand. "You told me that my body was my own to choose what happened to it. You gave me permission to value my own life. That changed everything for me." "You would have figured it out eventually," Austin said. "You are too strong, too smart to have stayed defeated forever." "Maybe," Beatrice allowed. "But you made it easier. You made it possible. You saved my life, Austin Kane." "And you made mine worth living, Beatrice Kane," Austin replied, pulling her close. They sat in comfortable silence as the desert sky turned gold and purple, and finally deep blue, the stars beginning to emerge one by one. From inside the house, they could hear the sounds of their children, the laughter and occasional squabbles of a normal family evening. Margaret was teaching the twins a song, her sweet voice drifting through the open window. Andrew was reading aloud to his youngest brother, practicing the patience his father had modeled so well. Beatrice thought about the woman she had been in 1878, stumbling down the street in Gila Bend with nowhere to go and no hope in her heart. She thought about how close she had come to giving up, to believing the lies she had been told about her own worthlessness, and she thought about the woman she had become, the woman who had built a life on her own terms, who had found real love and created a family rooted in respect and kindness. "Thank you," she whispered to Austin. Whispered, "For what?" "For seeing me," Beatrice said simply. "For treating me like I mattered. For showing me what love really looks like." Austin kissed her forehead gently. "Thank you for trusting me enough to let me love you. For being brave enough to choose yourself. To choose us. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Beatrice. I fall more in love with you every single day." They went inside together as the last light faded from the sky, joining their children for the evening meal. The table was crowded, noisy, full of life and love. This was what Beatrice had fought for, what she had suffered for. This family, this love, this life where she was valued not for what she could produce or endure, but simply for who she was. As the years continued to pass, the AA Ranch prospered. Austin and Beatrice raised their children to value kindness over obedience, respect over submission, love over duty. They taught their sons to honor women as equals, taught their daughters that their bodies and choices were their own. Emily, John, and Thomas became regular fixtures in their lives, bringing their own families for long visits, slowly building the relationships that had been stolen from them. The wounds never completely healed, but they became scars rather than open wounds, marks of survival rather than sources of ongoing pain. In 1900, on their 20th wedding anniversary, Austin gave Beatrice another journal. This one was larger than the first, bound in deep blue leather with her name stamped in gold. "For the next chapter," he said, "though if I have my way, we will need many more volumes before our story is done." Beatrice opened it to find he had written on the first page in his careful hand, "To my beloved wife, who taught me that true love means seeing the other person fully, respecting their choices, and choosing them anew every single day. Thank you for 20 years of choosing me. Here is to 20 more, and then 20 after that." "I will always choose you," Beatrice said, tears in her eyes. "Every day for the rest of my life, I choose you." They kissed, and it held all the passion and tenderness of 2 decades of partnership, of facing challenges together and building something beautiful from the ashes of Beatrice's old life. Around them, their children and grandchildren gathered for the anniversary celebration. Emily's oldest daughter played the fiddle while John's son sang. Thomas had brought his wife and their new baby, a little girl they had named Beatrice. Margaret Kane, now 14, and the image of her mother, helped serve the food while the twins raced around with their cousins. It was chaos and joy and love all mixed together, exactly as family should be. As the evening wound down and their guests began to depart or settle in for the night in the various beds and corners of the house, Beatrice and Austin found themselves alone again on the porch, their favorite spot for reflection. "Do you think about her?" Beatrice asked suddenly. "The woman I was when we met?" "Sometimes," Austin admitted. "I think about how scared you were, how lost. And then I look at you now, so strong and confident, and I'm amazed by the journey you have taken." "We have taken," Beatrice corrected. "I could never have done this without you, Austin. You gave me the foundation to rebuild on. You showed me what I deserved, what love should look like." "We saved each other," Austin said. "You needed someone to see your worth, and I needed someone to show me what real courage looks like. We make a good team, Mrs. Kane." "The best team," Beatrice agreed. They sat together until the stars filled the sky, talking about their children and grandchildren, making plans for the future, remembering the past with gratitude for the hard lessons learned. When they finally went inside, they passed the portrait that hung in their entryway, a painting they had commissioned 5 years earlier showing their whole family gathered together. Beatrice paused to look at it, as she often did, marveling at how far she had come from that desperate day in Gila Bend. She touched the frame lightly, a gesture of gratitude for every hard choice, every painful moment, every triumph that had brought her here. "Ready for bed?" Austin asked, offering his hand. Beatrice took it, as she had taken it hundreds of times before, as she would take it hundreds of times more. "Always," she said, "as long as it is with you." They climbed the stairs to their bedroom, the house settling into quiet around them. Outside, the Arizona desert stretched away under a blanket of stars, beautiful and harsh and full of possibility. Somewhere out there were other women facing impossible choices, other people being told they had no right to control their own bodies or lives. But here, in this house built on love and respect, Beatrice Kane slept peacefully in the arms of a man who had given her the greatest gift possible, the recognition of her own worth, the freedom to choose her own path, and the support to build the life she had always deserved. She had been cast out for refusing to have more children, for choosing life over obedience. And a cowboy had told her that her body was her own to choose. Those words had changed everything, had given her permission to value herself, to fight for her own survival. And from that choice, from that moment of recognition and respect, had grown a love story that would last a lifetime. A family built on foundation of mutual care and partnership. A legacy of strength and compassion that would be passed down through generations. As Beatrice drifted off to sleep, Austin's arms around her and the sound of their family breathing peacefully throughout the house, she smiled. She had lost much, it was true. But she had gained so much more. She had gained herself. And that had made all the difference. The years ahead would bring their own challenges and joys, sorrows and triumphs. But Beatrice and Austin would face them together, as partners and equals, two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage of Beatrice's old life. Their children would grow and have children of their own, spreading the lessons of respect and kindness and bodily autonomy that they had learned at their parents' table. Emily, John, and Thomas would heal more with each passing year, finding in their mother's home the love and acceptance that had been denied them in their youth. The AA Ranch would prosper and grow, becoming known throughout the territory as a place where people were treated fairly, where women's voices were heard and valued, where love was measured not by obedience but by mutual respect and care. And through it all, through every season and year, Beatrice and Austin would choose each other over and over again, not because duty or law or religion demanded it, but because they wanted to, because they had found in each other a true partner, a real love that honored both their individuality and their unity. It was in every way that mattered a happily ever after. Not perfect, not without its struggles and sorrows, but real and true and earned through courage and compassion. Beatrice Morgan, who had become Beatrice Kane, had chosen life, and life had given her everything she had dared to dream of and more besides. She had found love, real love, the kind that sees you fully and chooses you anyway. She had built a family rooted in respect rather than control. She had created a legacy that would outlast her, touching lives for generations to come. And it had all started with a simple, radical idea that her body was her own to choose what happened to it, that she had the right to value her own life, to make decisions about her own future, to say no even when the whole world told her she had no such right. Austin Kane had given her those words when she needed them most, and together they had built a life that proved their truth, a life filled with love and laughter, with children and grandchildren, with sunsets watched from porch steps and quiet conversations in the firelight. It was a good life, a beautiful life, a life worth fighting for, worth choosing, worth living fully and without regret. And as the stars wheeled overhead and the desert wind whispered through the sage, Beatrice Kane slept peacefully, knowing that she had found exactly what she had been searching for without even knowing she was searching. A home not just in a place, but in a person who saw her worth and helped her see it too. The end of one story, perhaps, but really just the continuation of another. The story of a woman who refused to let others define her worth, who chose herself when it mattered most, and who found that in doing so, she had opened the door to a love and a life beyond her wildest imaginings.